So recently I've been thinking about how important it actually is to listen to the right people, or to listen to the right information and to make judgments about it, really. Like, it is so important, especially if you have a goal and you want to get from A to B. You've got to imagine that it's a mix of things. How efficiently, should I say, can you get from A to B? And how quickly can you get from A to B? And sort of how much can you learn and experience on the way? You might not have to look at how quickly you've got to do it, but you don't want to take too long, I guess. But it depends what the experience involves. But, when we look at advice and we look at what people have to say and what people have to tell you, it's important to be surrounded by people and surrounded by information that is accurate and is right in a sense. It's important in terms of how you want to get from A to B. And I think if you start listening to the wrong people, it doesn't mean you're not going to get from A to B. It just means you're going to take a bit of a detour. It just means you're going to get distracted on the way, which isn't necessarily a negative thing, because you might learn some stuff. We are sort of unknown to how the world works in that regards, because it almost always benefits us, even if we don't stick on the path. So as a whole, it's not awful if we get distracted from our path and from going from A to B or whatever. But if you wanted to experience less stress or less whatever, less stress, I guess, or struggle, less problems, which isn't always the goal. Sometimes problems are good. Sometimes we learn a lot from them. But if you wanted to avoid stuff like that, it's important who you listen to, because someone could tell you a bunch of information and it can be completely wrong. And sometimes our beliefs are completely wrong. And what you don't understand, or what you don't probably see, is your beliefs. So, they're all made up of sometimes what other people have told you, what you've experienced, what you've seen, heard, do you know what I mean? And these can distract you. And I look at a lot of things, and some people in life who I'm like, God, if only you accepted this as a truth, my truth, in a sense. If you accepted what I believe, it would save you a lot of problems down the line, because I've learned those lessons. I feel like I know the answer, the best way to do things, certain things, and it's like, God, if only they accepted the words you had to say to them, which I guess is probably something everyone's parents think about the children. They're like, yeah, if only they just listen to me. You forget your parents are double your age. Maybe even triple in some cases. Or, if not parents, grandparents. They've lived triple the lives that you've currently lived. So surely the information they've learned can be effective, can be useful, can be right. And, back to some of the things I think about, and some of the research that I've done, and the knowledge that I have, and the experiences I've had. I understand different things, and I see different things, and I'm like, it's always tough, because you want someone to listen to you, but you also want them to understand it and experience why you have to do something, and experience the reason. So sometimes they might have to go through a negative because they don't listen to you, and I've done that myself. I've not listened to people when I'm like, should have just listened to them, and you wouldn't have to have gone through that. But well, you've gone through it, you now know. And for me, there's a lot of things on my mind that are like that, especially with health. I mean, people around me might hear me criticize their own health and maybe what they're eating and stuff like that. But the research I've done is quite in depth, and I believe it, but I also have to understand that it's my truth, it's what I believe, and it's quite hard not to push it onto other people, even though you see the mistakes people are making. And it's quite tough to do that, because you might care for them, or you might just, maybe if you don't even care for them, you just want to correct people's mistakes that they're making and show them, listen, this is the information, believe what you will, but this is the information. But then, you know, you've got to manage that, because you've also got to let people live their lives. You've got to let people make their own mistakes, and maybe they're not mistakes, they're just mistakes in your eyes. So you've not got to be overbearing sometimes. You've got to let people live and make their own choices, which is tough. It's tough when you think you know you're right, and you've gone through those same experiences, and you're like, no, listen, that's not the way to do this. This is it. I kept doing that, and it got me here. Exactly in your frustrated moment now. You know, these are the mistakes you're making. This is why it's happening. And people don't listen, and that's okay. You don't have to listen. But I kind of love how sensitive we are as humans to different information and from different people. You know, we all believe so many different things. We all believe we're right. None of us believe we're wrong. Yet we all can't be right. You know, I look at politics that's happening now, especially you see it in America. You know, one side wholeheartedly believe that one side is, you know, the left is right, and the other side fully believe that they're right as well. And you think, how can two people, God, that is a horrid noise, how can two groups, I guess, believe that they're fully right and the other person is awful? And it's all about the information. It's all about the information that they're given and how you interpret that. And whether, you know, one might be wrong, one might be right, who knows fully. But everyone has their opinion, and everyone's going to give it. So you do have to be careful with what you listen to, because we are so sensitive and we are so emotional. And it is kind of crazy of how sensitive we are. Because if you take some bad advice, you can go down some awful roads. You know, if you have some bad experiences and you don't listen to the people around you that know better, there's a lot of pain that can go on. There's a lot of pain that can go on that you could have not gone through. Now, like I said before, some pain you learn from, some pain is necessary. But, you know, I see paths that other people are going down, and, you know, overthinking. You're looking at an extreme negative. You're like, if only you just listened to me now, it could avoid that massive negative. And, you know, everyone else will be thinking the same thing. And everyone else will be thinking, look at him over there, look what he's doing, what the hell? You know, like this. Someone could tell me, you know, you don't want to do this. You don't want to put all these opinions out into the world. You don't want to show your face this much. This is embarrassing. What if you say something wrong? If you say something wrong, your whole, you know, reputation's over. And you got to keep a reputation. You know, some of that's true, but also some of it, if that individual doesn't care about all that, that piece of advice doesn't really apply. Like, that piece of advice doesn't apply to me, because I almost don't care about my reputation. Not to a lot of people, to maybe my loved ones and stuff, yeah. So it's like, how do you interpret this information? And I'd class it as a skill, knowing who to listen to, when to listen, when not to listen, because our emotions get in the way of us and say, no. You know, we make up a bunch of excuses. No, this person just believes that because of X, Y, and Z. You know, the delusional and stuff like that. You know, that situation doesn't apply to me because of this and that. And I guess that's probably why we have so much conflict in the world, because you don't really take everyone's opinion, because your own experience is different to theirs, and you put excuses in the way because we're emotional. Defense mechanisms come into play, and you say, nah, they're not right, because if they're right, it means this other point is right, which means they're not a dickhead. You know what I mean? Which means they're not a bad person. Whereas it's like, just look at the facts, just look at the singular thing that's going on. There's a lot of people, especially on social media, that might be speaking facts. One example that comes to mind is, what's his name? What's his name? It's just gone from my head. Alex Jones, that's it, that's him. You listen to Alex Jones, and he's an absolute nutter. He seems absolutely crazy until the things that he says comes true. And you're like, oh, shit, he might be right here. And then he goes and says something ridiculous, and he goes and does something ridiculous, and then everything he said becomes ridiculous. Whereas it's like, well, maybe this was ridiculous, and this was, different parts were ridiculous. But look over here at the Jeffrey Epstein accusations that he's made years ago, and you say, well, maybe he was onto something here. And it is quite hard. I understand why it happens in society, that we do almost cancel people for one opinion that might not be related to everything else. It's because you almost can't risk it. You can't risk, no, this person was wrong, so get them out of it. We can't have people that are wrong. And it is tough. But it is also kind of up to each individual person to manage what they listen to and who they listen to. Because it's quite important, the influences that we have on other people and that they have on us. You look at different families, and you look at the beliefs, and you look at over how many generations have these beliefs been passed on, and who broke the mold, who broke this opinion of this, who trusted doctors all their life, is your generation the first one to not trust them? And how hard is that now to listen to other people's advice telling you stuff? And if you've made that one mistake here, you could look at everything else as being awful, and every other opinion someone else is giving you because they've been wrong in this department. You could look at it all and say it's a bit skewed here, and I don't know what to do. But when it comes to adults giving advice, it is kind of crazy that us younger people don't take the advice, even though they have lived longer. Like, if you think about your life now and you double it, right now I think, God, I've learned a lot. Double it. You'd be hoping to learn double the amount. And then you think for your parents and stuff like that, you double, you look at, if they're lucky and they have someone living till 100. We have people living till 100 in these days, and your parents might be 50. That person who's 100's double your parents' life and quadruple my life. What have they learned? What knowledge do they have? I mean, what knowledge do they have that's completely wrong and completely fixed on almost emotion? But what if you run through everything with a fine-tooth comb? What's right? And another point is, it's kind of crazy that these older people don't really have that much of a voice, because younger people go, no, you're old, you don't know what life's like now, you don't know what society's like now, you're old, you're not with it. And that's kind of an excuse, really, if you think about it. But then you've also got the other side of the coin, where it's like, old ways might not be the best ways. And this is why it is extremely hard to know who to listen to and what information to actually take on board. And that's why it's kind of so important to be testing things in life all the time. Yeah, let's adopt this point of view and just test it and see, how does it affect me in my life? well, maybe I won't eat these sort of foods, and we'll see for a month how my body reacts, or month, 2 month, 3 month. We'll see how my body reacts. You know, that's what I did with my diet. I'm listening to these people, these doctors, and saying, it makes sense. The information, the storyline that you're telling makes sense. Let's give it a go. And when you give it a go and you experience what it's like, and you go, well, has my life improved? Has how I feel improved? Yeah. Well, now this storyline and the information you've been told seems to work. If we do it for a long enough period of time, maybe you'll get more knowledge and you'll see. Maybe you'll be wrong and die early. But without listening to information and trying to test it, and it's trying to test it without making as many mistakes as you can, without any, well, fatal mistakes as you can, I guess, because then you can't test anymore. But I did read a quote actually yesterday, and it was talking about failure and how important it actually is. I don't remember the quote now, but you know, failure is very important because it almost gets you closer to the right answer. The more you fail, the more you say, no, this is wrong, let's try this one. And then you might find out it's right. But only, you know, sometimes listening can reduce the amount of tests you have to do, can reduce the amount of mistakes you have to make. And it's definitely a skill figuring out who's telling the truth, who's been manipulated, who's been influenced, and what's right and what's wrong, and what's right and what's wrong for you, because you might not be the same as someone over there, especially health-wise. Genetically, you might not be the same. Yeah. But yeah, I find it interesting just to think about everyone's got an opinion about everything and who's right. And it's quite hard to figure out who is right for you anyway. But yeah, anyway, peace.